So, to get to the Supreme Court arguments this week, let's walk through what we heard from the justices. I feel like there are kind of two big questions that we went into Tuesday asking. One of which it was, is there even standing to bring this case to the Supreme Court? And then the secondary question is, I guess, if yes, then did the FDA do something wrong in approving this drug? Let's start with the first question. Is there standing for this case? And from what we heard from the justices this week, do you think the Supreme Court justices think this case has standing?
Yeah, great question. I mean, in my opinion, absolutely not. And like, amongst the legal community, it's absurd to think that there is standing. And I think we heard this echoed from the justices yesterday. Even like Amy Coney Barrett and like other judges that are potentially more conservative leaning seemed to indicate that, they had a really hard time trying to get to how there is standing. And it just is so attenuated, right? So the argument here is that there is standing amongst this group of doctors, emergency room doctors, one of whom is actually a dentist, and these medical associations. These doctors are not prescribing mifepristone. They are not seeing patients outright who have taken mifepristone. And like, how do we get from the FDA's approval process and the FDA protocol to the injury by these incurred by these doctors? And I think I read something that summed it up really nicely, and it was like the stance is that if mifepristone remains on the market and can be prescribed under the FDA's current protocol, then some percentage of people will experience complications. And it is such a small percentage of people that experience complications from mifepristone. But let's just say there are those people, right? Then they end up in the emergency room. And then if they seek care from those emergency rooms, then one of those doctors may have to be in a situation where they treat those patients. And then those doctors would be in a situation where they would have to weigh saving the life and providing care within the medical standard of care for this woman versus their conscience. And this is what they're claiming they have standing on. But, plaintiffs were not able to point to not even one example where the doctor's conscience were called into question. And furthermore, as Amy Coney Barrett pointed out, the plaintiffs in the case are living in states with abortion bans. So how likely is this even of happening, right? Like, where's the standing there? Where's the injury? And again, it just seemed very clear from the perspective of the justices that they could not find the standing either.
So you mentioned Amy Coney Barrett. Did it seem like the conservative justices are aligning with the more liberal justices here, and we have a more cohesive view of this case across ideological lines?
Listen, I think that the Supreme Court needs to keep its sense of legitimacy in the eyes of the public. Somebody I was listening to yesterday, said the Supreme Court and the laws are kind of like Tinkerbell. If you don't believe in it, it's not real. And the Supreme Court has lost so much legitimacy in the last few years that, when there's a case where there is really just absolutely no good reason to hear because there is no injury by the plaintiffs who are bringing the case, it would really discredit the court to hear this case on the merits. Do I think that the more conservative justices are falling into line on that? I mean, you have Alito and you have Clarence Thomas, who definitely want to do whatever they can to make sure mifepristone isn't on the market and prevent abortion care. So do I think they're falling into line? No. What they were doing yesterday was something else. They were bringing in Comstock, which is a law from the 1800s. And we can talk about that if you're
I,
interested.
I was going to ask you how a law from the 19th century played into this, but just to kind of drill down into the standing case, my understanding is that the broader pharmaceutical industry is concerned about this because let's take it out of the reproductive healthcare space and just talk about I have seasonal allergies, I have Claritin, and God forbid I take Claritin and I have a negative effect on me, on my health, because I took this allergy medicine. If this case has standing, is there a future in which someone could argue that Claritin should have its FDA approval revoked because I had a negative effect? Like, what are the broader implications on the drug industry if this case were to move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it on the head. The issue here, like, is way more broad than just abortion or mifepristone. This case has the opportunity to impact healthcare innovation in this country and in the world because we are a leader in this country in healthcare innovation. Um, so much more broadly, there are millions and billions of dollars that go into R&D for pharmaceutical companies to adhere to the FDA's rigorous approval process. And if all of a sudden we are living in a world where anyone who is claiming an injury can bring a case to overturn the FDA's decision when they are the agency entrusted with our healthcare regulatory decisions, well then who is going who why would drug companies invest this money in this country to do those things, right? Like, we need to have some sort of structure and respect for that structure and stability in order to function. And yeah, this if we find standing for these plaintiffs, if the justices find standing for this plaintiffs, it's really setting up a future where anything goes, and anyone can bring these cases, which will not only disrupt the healthcare industry, but will totally clog up our judicial system.